Welcome into another edition of Region Roundup, and let me just say I'm James Boyd here with Mike Clark, and we're doing take 2 of this podcast because as a true journalist and in true journalistic fashion, I received a phone call that I had to take during our first take, and I'm sorry, Mike, I kept you a little longer than I would have liked it to, but I'm glad you're still with me and haven't ditched me just yet.
Right, and I'm going to try to remember all of the brilliant points I made the first time that wound up on the on the outtakes. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to do a director's cut of it or something. But we just talk about winter, which is really aggravating me. And February coming in with all the snow and cold. Not a fan of that at all. But somehow we in the region are pretty tough and managed to get all of the girls' sectional championships in. There's postseason in wrestling and swimming and boys basketball regular season. And, you were telling me actually also before we got on that, you made it with 2 minutes to spare to Chesterton the other night, which is always an adrenaline rush for a sports writer, because most sports writers have been in this situation before where they're, for whatever reason, we're rushing to get to a game, and you're checking the clock in your car. It's like, am I going to make it? And then you drive up and walk in the gym, and boom, there's the tip. Well, or actually, I guess not now. No jump balls anymore, but still. Anyway.
No jump balls in Illinois.
That's true. Yeah, we're going to be talking about that. Yeah, Illinois is back with sports with some different rules. We'll talk about that. That's right. Anyway, getting started with some football news, and LaPorte has a new football coach. His name is David Ortiz, not Big Pappy, but a former star at Portage who was on their state team playing for Craig Bazia, who also has a new football coaching job in the region, incidentally, at Crown Point, as we talked about last week's pod, I think. And so kind of a cool story there. A guy who's paid his dues, and now he is going to be a head coach.
Yeah, he's been an assistant coach in the Dunlin for quite some time. He was, after he graduated from Portage, after playing for Coach Buzia, he returned and joined the staff at Portage, followed him to Michigan City. Ortiz is also an assistant under Phil Mason, who's still at Michigan City now. So, he's going to face two of his former guys, when he gets on the gridiron this fall. And the main one would be Coach Buzia. He was saying that he was basically like a father figure to him during some tough times, during his adolescence. He didn't like go into detail, but he was basically saying like, hey, things weren't always great, at home for me. And he kind of stepped up and gave me, an example of what a real man is and how to go about your business, how to be a good person, how to work hard for things. And he wants to instill those things and those characteristics into his players. He's been at Portage for the last 3 years. This will be his fourth year, first time as a head coach. He's been on the defensive side of the ball the last few years. And from what I've read just on social media, from the parents and players that I have, they're excited about the hire. He's excited about the hire. The AD, Ed Galeland, told me that they originally did not open up the application for the job to the public. They decided to give the inside guys, an opportunity first. And after David gave his interview, he blew them away. So it was a pretty easy choice for them. And it's kind of like a sense of stability for the program. He's a familiar guy. He's a Dunlin guy. He's a region guy. And also, he's not going anywhere. He teaches at the middle school with his wife. And he told me himself, like, hey, this is where I want to be. I have no plans of picking up and leaving anytime soon. So, if all goes as planned, he'll be the coach for the foreseeable future for a LaPorte program who now has his third head coach, and I believe for the last 4 or 5 seasons. So this is, I think, a good hire. He's got some credibility as far as being, like I said, a great player. He was a Mr. Indiana football candidate back in 1994, and he's also, like I said, paid his dues. He's been been an assistant for like I said, 2 other great coaches, and now it's time to see what he can do, in his own right. So it's fun. I had a great time talking to him. He seems like he's going to be a really easy interview. The guy was pretty talkative. I don't think I had to ask a question for the first minute of our interview. I kind of just said, "Hey, what's up, coach?" And then he was like, "Hey, life's great." So it was cool talking to him. I'm excited about it, and that rounds out the DAC coaching openings. Like you mentioned, Buzia is now at Crown Point, taking over for Kevin Ainwright. Lake Central has Rick Good, who came over from Calumet. He replaces Tony Bartomeo, and then the only coaching opening we have left in the region is Calumet. So we'll see what happens with that. But in true, my life as a journalist fashion, I was off Monday, and then the news broke that he was hired, and I was like, this is probably thing number 1 on my Tuesday agenda. So got the story done, and had to give myself some grace because I almost jumped on it when I saw it. I was like, you got to have an off day, James. So I enjoyed my off day, and now we're back on the grind, and he's excited to be back on the grind and hopefully moving that program in the continued right direction. They had a pretty decent year last year, and actually went toe-to-toe with Valpo in the sectional final. So anybody who's familiar with the region knows that Valpo is kind of like the top dog. So it's not like LaPorte laid down for them, and I think they have some pieces there that Ortiz is excited to build on, and we'll see what happens going forward. And hopefully in the fall, the world will look a lot different as far as COVID-19 and things like that. So hopefully we'll have a full 9-game regular season schedule, and then we'll see what happens after that.
Right, and we have some more football news as well. Last week was the second football signing period beginning, and actually it used to be the only one. Everybody used to sign their letters of intent in February, but a few years ago, the NCAA introduced an early signing period in December, and partly because of the pandemic, everything got pretty much flipped this year. There are many, many more athletes who signed in December, and there's a few reasons. I think probably the biggest one is that there's been so much upheaval in the NCAA this year. This year, the school year is a free year for every NCAA athlete. It does not count against their clock for eligibility. So there's going to be a lot of kids staying around. Actually, I guess they're not kids. They're 22, 23 years old staying around for an extra year. But college coaches did not have a lot of certainty that they would have in normal years. Well, first of all, obviously the season got pushed back. And then as soon as the season was over, a lot of players had decisions about, were they going to come back for an extra year? Were they going to use that extra year or not? And a lot of them just had to take some time. Some of them decided to come back. Some of them said, okay, even though I've got an extra year, it's time for me to move on to the next phase of my life. A lot of them wound up in the transfer portal. I saw a crazy stat that I think at one point there were like 4 players for every FBS school in the transfer portal, and some of them may wind up not playing again. Some of them may wind up staying. Some of them may wind up going to an FCS school. But there's just so much roster churn and uncertainty that it's been hard. It was a lot of kids thought, okay, well, if I have an offer, high school kids thought, if I have an offer in December, I'm going to take it. I'm not going to, wait longer to see if I get something better or take my time in deciding, So they snapped up those offers, and as a result, a lot of the action for the second signing day was things like PWOs, preferred walk-ons, and that is who we're going to be talking about today. His name is Brendan Carr from South Central. He's a 6'8", two-sport athlete, basketball and football, who is going to Northern Illinois as a preferred walk-on, and kind of an intriguing story, as you've told us before.
Yeah, so obviously this story and all the others we talk about are on our website. You can go check it out, but the Cliff Notes version is that, like you said, he's 6'8", and Mike, he actually played at tight end primarily this senior year. So just imagine a 6'8" kid in the GSSC, running down the middle of the field in Class A football. So Don't think many people could stop him at that level with that size, but he was telling me that he thinks that his basically his agility, his ability to move in space at that size is what kind of intrigued NIU. He also did some legwork himself alongside his dad during quarantine, sending out basically following and messaging a bunch of coaches on Twitter to see what would shake loose. Got some Division III interest and Division II interest. Got interest from Valparaiso as well. But at the end of the day, he was saying, I feel like I have a shot to earn a scholarship eventually at NIU. So he's willing to bet on himself, basically, and give it his best shot. So I'm excited for him. He's projected to be an offensive tackle at NIU. He's had some offensive line experience throughout high school. But again, I think this, for both sides, is kind of like a, what can he do for us? What does his upside look like for us? And obviously at 6'8", you can't teach that. So, they can teach a lot of other things like technique and things like that. And if he's able to catch on pretty quick with that size, I'd say he has a promising future in the MAC. So we'll see what happens. But it was pretty cool. He's one of 77 students in his graduating class, to give you an idea of how small his school is. So, to put that in perspective, most DAC schools have like 80 kids on their team. And he has 80 in his grade, boys and girls. So that was pretty cool. And, he's a pretty good basketball player too. He's averaging a double-double. Like I said, he's 6'8". You would think if you have a clue about basketball, you'd be pretty good at it. And he is. And we'll see what happens. I think that he told me he was willing to go basketball or football. Football kind of presented more opportunities for him, so he took it. And now we'll see what happens at the next level for him. But just one more unique story that I wanted to write about, just because I know we write about a lot about the big-time athletes like JoJo Johnson and others, and rightfully so. But this was a situation where, I think as a region person and as some of those small school supporters, this is a kid you're probably rooting for, just because, like I said, he's coming from a very small school, small program, and he's going to try to play, big time, Division I football. So we'll see what happens.
Right. And now it's time for some basketball, and there's a lot of basketball to talk about. The girls are in the regional round coming up this week, and we'll get to them in a bit. But first of all, Jalen Washington, who's doing the slow but steady recovery from his injuries that we've talked about, and we've talked about how Chris Buggs has, basically said, there's no reason for Jalen to play, 28 minutes in November or December. They want Jalen to be at his peak in March, and it looks like he's getting closer to that, which is no surprise. Obviously, he's healthy and, getting really back into the flow of the game. And the Cougars had a big game over the weekend against Cathedral. Big win for them and a big game for Jalen, I guess, too.
Yeah, so I'll have more on this in my boys' basketball notes, which will be out later this week. And from what I understand, Jalen, I believe, scored 19 points in an overtime win against Cathedral. They beat them 72-63. And Cathedral was ranked number 3 in the state at the time for Class 4A, so that's a huge win for the program. Kamari Peterson, their point guard, also had a big game. He had 23 points. Parion Roberson, their kind of utility guy, hit some really big threes. Saw some highlights on Twitter. And like I said, I'm kind of going off what I've seen on Twitter. I'll be talking to the coach and some of the players shortly, but I just wanted to really just remind everyone that Jalen is coming along. He's getting to that point now where he's, just having those usual 15, 16, 17, 18-point games. Like I said, he had 19 against Cathedral. And it's not necessarily that he's I know people might look like, well, why is he averaging more? It's like he doesn't take very many shots. And like I mentioned just previously before, they have a very talented team. So he doesn't have to take every shot. They have other Division I caliber players on their team. A guy I didn't even mention, Krishan Christmas, another athletic Division I caliber guy. So he's making the most of his opportunities. And I think that it's worth mentioning that Gary West is now, and Gary West's side is now 14-3 on the year. Their 3 losses are to Hammond, which was number 1 in 3A. He lost to Lawrence North, which was number 1 in 4A when they lost to them. And he lost to Valpo, which was a 52-57 loss. So it's not like they're losing to like these terrible teams. They haven't had this horrible season. But if you talk to some people, you'll think like Westside's having a bad year just because, Washington hasn't had like a 30-point game or something like that. But, I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't get that just because they have a lot of talented players, even some of their role players. And like I said, he's very efficient and he makes most of his shots. And his 3-point shot, his jump shot in general is looking great. And I'm reminded when I watch the videos and when I see him in person, like, oh, this is why he's a 5-star. So just keep an eye out for Gary Westside. I'll be probably catching a game of theirs soon. They got Munster coming up. They got Andran coming up. They got Chesterton coming up within the next 2 or 3 weeks. So looking forward to seeing them back on the court again against some other top-tier competition around the region. And then on that note, we can transition to girls basketball. And like I told Mike, I made it to the Chesterton final. 2 minutes to spare. Didn't even have time to use the bathroom. I've sat in the car for 2 hours and just walked in, sat down, and went straight to like covering the game. And it was a good one. It was expected. Crown Point ran past the host Trojans for their 3rd straight sectional championship. Jessica Carruthers, in my opinion, is probably one of the better decision makers in the region, girls or boys, and probably the state for that matter. She's a true point guard, Mike. I know she puts up some pretty big numbers offensively. But if you look at some of her big offensive games, 1, she's always pretty efficient, and 2, it kind of just comes off of what the team needs. Like, she's a very good just reader of defenses, and she dominated the Trojans. She had 22 in the first half. Could have went for 40 if she wasn't taken out. But again, she doesn't even have that mindset. She kind of just does what needs to be done. And I talked to her after the game, and she was telling me like, yeah, it feels good to win. And it was kind of just like a ho hum, another night at the office, Mike. So that was pretty surprising. And then also, I want to see your reaction to. I did a story. I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but I'm sure you saw the box score. But we had 6 other teams advance to the regional round. We got Griffith in Class 3A. We got Kankakee Valley in Class 3A. We got Andran in Class 2A. And then we got the 3-4A schools, Crown Point, LaPorte, Maryville. Of those teams, Kankakee Valley had the most ridiculous way to get to the regional round. And, so they had a 34-31 win over Knox, but they were down, I believe, 27 to 13 or something going into the 4th quarter. So what is your reaction to them, I guess being dead in the water, Mike, and then just flipping the switch to win their 3rd sectional in the last 4 years?
Well, you don't see a lot of teams that score 13 points in 3 quarters and then come back and win a game. That's pretty unusual. I mean, obviously, this is just a strange year in so many ways. And, it's like the kids, have gone through so much. I guess maybe that had maybe a little bit of a role in, you think about every kid in every program, not just KV girls, but literally everybody, has had to kind of adjust to so many different protocols this year. And and not that you don't have adversity in any regular year. Obviously you have injuries, and you have kids get the flu and, stuff like that. But, just maybe this year that gave them a little bit of extra, push. It's you never really know, and it's, I guess the crazy thing about that too is, and I'm just just looking at your story right now, is that they Knox beat them by 23.
Yes,
in a much higher scoring game earlier on, but obviously Kankakee Valley had a pretty good defensive game plan this game, and it took them a while to get their offense going, but they did, and they're moving on.
Yeah, they're also a really young team. One thing I like to point out, I think, 3 of their 4 top contributors in that game were sophomores. That junior Taylor Schoonfeld, she basically led the way with 8 points, 10 rebounds, but they only have 1 senior graduating, so they're be on the lookout for them next year as well. But just wanted to plug that just because when I saw I was getting some Twitter updates and I saw what happened. I was like, there's no way. Like, because, I mean, it's one thing to come back and make it a game. There's nothing to just completely flip the switch. I mean, you go from a Knox team that's, leading the game, dominating the game, and then you just flip that switch and gut one out. And then one of the coolest things about it is they were able to do it on their home floor for one of the very first times all year where they actually had some fans there. So the energy in the gym was more like a sectional championship game, and the excitement was there. So that just made it even more memorable for the players and the coach. So we'll see what happens this upcoming Saturday. I'll be heading to the LaPorte Regional where we have 3 teams represented, Crown Point, Maryville, and LaPorte. And we have Penn there as well. We got Maryville and Penn in one semifinal, and then LaPorte and Crown Point in another semifinal. And then I'll be out there all day, basically. So I'm looking forward to this weekend, just because Friday I have Valpo and Crown Point boys. And then I have those 3 games for regionals on Saturday. So I'll do 4 games in 24 hours. And it's going to be fun.
Well, as you say in your Friday night hype videos, you're living the dream.
Yes,
and,
I am.
Although I gotta ask you a little bit. You've been slacking off on those a little bit.
I know. I've gotten some other complaints, Mike, and I don't know. I feel like football just football kind of felt like it was like a weekly thing just because I only had one football game a week. But I'll see what I can do this upcoming weekend to I guess check in with my Twitter feed and my folks that enjoy the hype videos. But I've been slacking. I'm sorry.
We do. It's kind of like the capper on the Friday night. Everybody goes out to a game, and comes back, and everybody kind of clicks on the website, and reads through our coverage and everything. And then one of the things we can count on is like there's James sitting in his car, freezing, and getting ready to make the long trek back home. But it's again, it feels like part of our Friday night routine. So
all right, well, Mike, you'll have my word. I don't know if it'll be Friday night. I'll do it probably Saturday night to give you all a full weekend recap of my craziness. But I mean, that's the life we live sometimes. And I know, as I'm joking about how busy I'm going to be, I know that things are going to be picking up for you as well with some of those Illinois sports changes. So I guess what's the latest on the sports across the state line?
Well, actually, the newest news, not directly impacting our area, but Public League lower risk winter sports are back as of tomorrow, Thursday. We're recording this on Wednesday. But the biggest news is that Illinois basketball is underway. I can't remember. Actually, we did not talk about it last week, I don't think, but the weeks kind of run together. Excuse me for those of you who may remember these pods better than I do. But, basketball is back in Illinois. It's going to be a sprint to the finish, and there's going to be some pauses like there have been in Indiana. I mean, it's interesting because Illinois is kind of experiencing the same thing that Indiana's been doing for the last, 6 months or so since fall sports started, and it's just a reality of the era that we live in, is that there will be teams that will be shutting down and starting up again. But basketball is back. I think 2 weekends ago, there were just like 1 or 2 games. Last week, there were a few games. This week, we're getting kind of back into the normal groove of things. Mm-hmm. And TF North, TF South, Marion Catholic are all underway. Those are the 3 high schools that we consider part of our coverage area on the Illinois side of the line. I have not had a chance to get out there yet. The rules, as we had talked about a little bit, the rules are a little bit different. Illinois players must wear masks, and actually everybody in the gym must wear a mask. Most schools are not, well, I should take that back. A lot of schools are not allowing fans. A few are. A limited amount, 25% capacity, I think, is what most schools that are allowing fans are going with, or a flat number. The Public League is going with 50 people, I think. Actually, 50 people entirely in the gym. And sorry, I'm trying to multitask here. But anyway,
don't worry, Mike. I got your back.
I need to send a quick.
See, this is the life we live. This is the life
it really is.
But one thing I will mention while we're busy mentioning that you were, the Illinois reporters were able to get a, an update on the 50 people limit, which excludes the media. So that's actually, I think, a good thing that media doesn't count against that number. Right. And obviously, if you have one or two more reporters there or photographer, that won't affect, the safety of the game, in my opinion, or, how the game is ran. Honestly, it'll just be able to bring more, people into that game through the eyes of the reporter and the photographer and things like that. So I was pretty happy about that.
And again, especially since a lot of schools aren't allowing fans, and even the schools that are allowing fans are not allowing visiting fans. That's the other wrinkle here, is that actually the South Suburban Conference, which is the conference that TF North and TF South are in, they're not allowing visiting fans. So, and a lot of schools have set up live streams, as you said, to kind of give fans the experience along with the media that will be covering them. So it's a different world. Again, they also have, because kids have to wear masks, they have a mask break. It's kind of like a TV timeout at a college game. Halfway through every quarter, actually, they're doing mask breaks where it's like a minute break where kids can take off their mask, get a drink of water or whatever. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this actually happens. Like I said, I haven't been to a game yet, but looking forward to seeing how it looks in action. And it is a little bit different from Indiana. Obviously, Indiana players don't wear masks, and the crowds are a little bit bigger too. But we'll see. And it's basketball, and again, it's going to be a short season because they're also playing football, starting with practice on March 3rd, and the regular season starts on March 19th. 6-week regular season as of now, no playoffs, so we'll see how that goes. But moving on to our next item, the Railcats. You remember them?
Yes.
The local professional baseball team plays at the Steel Yard. They sat out last year because of COVID. The American Association, which they're a member of, 6 of the teams wound up playing. Actually, it was only going to be less than that, but then a couple more teams opted in after the numbers got better during the summer, as we all recall. So all 12 teams in the American Association are playing this year. Opening day is May 18th, so a little bit more than, 3 months away.
Yep.
And the Railcats are very excited to get back at it. And we're not sure at this point. They're still kind of sorting out what their attendance policies are going to be. We don't know. It's going to be dependent both on the Indiana State Department of Health guidelines and also any local guidelines from the city of Gary. They're kind of working it out. They expect to have some fans. How many, we don't know yet again, but looking at a lot of similar promotions that we've seen. The fireworks displays is the main one, obviously. And the other thing is that's kind of exciting is that even though there was no Railcats baseball last year, there were a lot of events at the park. There were some youth games played. They had set up a golf driving range, a golf event one weekend too. Some of that stuff is going to be back. There's a possibility that there might be some other events, like possibly concerts there. A lot of those details are still TBA again because of seeing how many people can be safely welcomed into the park. And that's, as we all know, is a very fluid situation, but numbers seem to be getting better. Obviously, vaccines are available. And, so that's an exciting thing. I mean, the Northwest Indiana Oilmen, who are the summer college team, did play last year, with under some just COVID protocols, so they'll be back as well. But it's going to be a more normal summer in the region to have a couple of higher profile baseball teams, the Railcats and the Oilmen, back, and all of us are looking forward to summer number one after the way the weather's been lately, and also just the opportunity to obviously to get out and do stuff. All of us are a little got cabin fever to a certain degree, just not being able to do as much, as you and I have talked about a lot. You not being able to see your grandma on the same basis that you've seen her, your entire life is a little bit different. Obviously, your grandma's in the higher risk category, but she's going to be getting the vaccine, and hopefully, before too long, you can go sit in your backyard, sit in your grandma's backyard, and hang out with her like you always have, and give her that big hug that you've been saving for 11 months now.
Yeah,
so.
There you go. And what's funny is I've it's kind of shifted to, like I mentioned in one of my previous columns, like I watch house shows with my mom now all the time, and bond with her. And then my grandma, I usually call her because she usually stays up pretty late, so I usually call her on the way home from whatever assignments I'm on. So if I'm out 3 or 4 times a week, I'm usually calling her every time on the way home. And we talk, and she'll talk me all the way home, and it's easy. It's just about all types of stuff, growing up together, and the things that she taught me, and laughing about things that we did back in when I was a kid, and even now, just thoughts about the world and what's going on and things like that. So it's all welcome. But like you said, I'm excited for some normalcy. I think the Railcats coming back is a good thing. And honestly, from a journalistic point, when you were my editor, or I guess my main editor, because you still edit my stuff, I appreciate that. But, you would always tell me like, hey, these are some of the best stories you're going to find during the summer. All these guys, they're always coming in, coming out, and they have these unique journeys to get to the Railcats, whether it's literally from overseas or like the hometown hero or whatever the case may be. So from that standpoint, I'm looking forward to hopefully getting out to a few games myself, and just, writing about those guys who otherwise, will fly under the radar. It's always a unique situation. Greg Taggart can talk with the best of them. So it should be fun to check back in with him and the team. And just to, I'm not a baseball fan. I will not lie to you all. But when I'm out there reporting and the kids are out there, the families are out there, when things are normal, it is a good time. The weather's warm and music's loud. Just things that, remind you that, hey, this is summer. And this is a good time, in my opinion. So hopefully, when things do open up, I'm sure it's going to be different to start, but I'm really hoping that it won't have to be too different for too long. So we'll see what happens. But until next time, you all, stay safe. Keep an eye on me and Mike's Illini, which is improper English, but still, you get the point.
I-O, triple-double.
Yes, and Mike, I'm sorry I didn't text you back when you texted me about that. I was driving through the snow to Chesterton. However, I did watch that game, and I saw what my Illini were doing. They're up to number 6 in the polls. And yeah, just stay tuned, stay safe, wear a mask, and we'll check in with you all next time.